All right, I call the Village of Rhinebeck Planning Board meeting for December 6, 2022 to order. The first item on the agenda is old continued business. Samantha King, Tony Warren Temple Smith, architect representing the agent, 810 Chestnut Street, renovations to the existing house, porch additions and so on. I want to thank Jeff and Michael for making a tour and writing up this report. I don't know if you've got a copy of the report or... So, you guys want to sum up what you found, or?
I'd say there was a half a dozen roughly important architectural elements that, show how nice and attractive this historic building is, and they just basically, we thought they should all be preserved, restored, reused, and somehow just not disappear from the building once the intensive work that will get done on it, and the plans that we've seen so far, I think, are going to be really nice, and I think it'll be, like most houses in the historic district, when it's done, it'll be a big improvement. And
we've got some photos here too. These are consistent with the report. I guess we'll take a look shortly at the elevations that Warren had provided with notes on them that are consistent with what we saw on the site visit. Here's a lot of very nice detail on the porch and the overhang. Then there's the front door. There are two front doors. One of them will be repurposed to act as the front door. Don't know what you'll do with the second door, but that's available for your use. The eaves, the rafter detail coming under the eaves and the molding, it's what's the molding called, Warren?
Well, there's a rake molding running up and down
Yeah, and this here.
right. Yeah, crown molding.
Crown molding. The crown molding and the curved rafter detail under the eaves around the house would be preserved, restored if needed. Each end of the house in the corner has this sunburst, and it's this dental molding around the frame of the louvers into the attic. There's this little 3-window bump out on the side, which will be retained. There's this very interesting double window with a peak molding and a little medallion above it. There's this kind of ship porthole window at the top with these little feet on the side.
We call it the life preserver.
Oh, the life preserver window. Okay, there's that. So all of that. There are not completely around the house, but especially in the front of the house, there are what almost appears to be original type of shutters, because you can see the shutter hardware here. And the idea is that they'll either be reused or replaced with something in kind that will look like it fits the dimensions of the window closed, not like fake shutters. This little shed has no value whatsoever and is going to be removed, and we already know that nothing will be done with the garage as part of this application. So I think I'd say that, Warren, that was pretty consistent with what you'll show us in the elevations notes? Okay.
It's a very beautiful house in need of some love.
Yes, yes it is.
Right, so I'm here with Samantha Koenig, who's the proud owner of the house, and is prepared to give it all the love it needs to bring it back. As you know, it has asbestos shingle siding on it now. We're going to remove that, but all the details that Jeff and Michael noted when they visited the house with me are going to be preserved, and if anything is deteriorated, needs to be replicated, we'll replicate it in kind. But that is the plan, and in fact, at the back of the house where we're adding new porches, we're going to replicate or recreate the details from the front porch in terms of the spindles and so forth. So Samantha is very keen to preserve and enhance all the aspects of the house and to make it probably a little better than it was originally. As was noted, there is no plan originally we had a plan to replace the garage. We're not doing that. We're going to leave the existing garage where it is, as is for the time being, and at some future point we'll come back with an application to probably move the door to center it in the gable that faces east and maybe replace the siding or repair things there, but it's in reasonably good a condition that's not about to fall down, and there's no urgency to do anything with it. So that is the gist of that. The elevations that I sent this afternoon, too late for Ryan to get, but to the board, was simply the couple of construction document elevations in process, noting specifically the plans to retain and repair the existing trim items that Michael and Jeff had noted and were embodied in the report that Ryan was kind enough to share with me at the end of last week, and so I wanted to get those on there so it would be part of your record to see that we were specifically calling out those items to be retained and repaired where necessary in the exterior of the house. It's a lot of very interesting sort of folk architecture details. You know, it's not exactly a high-end house like some of the ones in the village, but certainly carpenters who worked on those other houses would have worked here and brought a little of this and a little of that in here. And it's a very solid house, despite its use over the years by a number of different tenants. You know, it seems to be very square. The basement is in good shape, although we are going to raise the house up to get it out of the ground. Right now it sits practically at grade. But overall, there's nothing fundamentally problematic with the structure, and so we're going to retain it and just add out the back to make it more useful for Samantha. That's the gist of the plan. It will be painted. Right now it's all white. It will be painted to have a little more contrast, so all those details will become a little more apparent when you have some contrast between the trim details and the body of the siding. The siding itself, we're going to see what the condition is of the original siding when we take the shingles off. Many times it's very salvageable, or some of the boards are salvageable. Sometimes they've had holes filled in them for insulation. Some of them may have deteriorated down at the bottom, but we anticipate reusing as much as possible. And if indeed it's in terrible shape, then we would replace it in kind with either a cedar or possibly a hardy board. But the intention is to do wood. Same thing with windows. The house right now has a lot of vinyl replacement windows. We're going to remove those and put in, we're showing in most cases 2/2 windows that will be probably aluminum on the outside and wood on the inside, but will be actually more accurate historically, at least in appearance, than the vinyl windows that are there right now. That's pretty much the gist of what we intend to do here, and if there's anything we haven't covered or we want to revisit from previous meetings, you can see from all the files that Jeff was looking at earlier. We've been at this for a number of months with you, and with the zoning board we came back and so forth, but this is kind of where we've landed now. And I think, I'm sorry, one other thing I'll mention, that Samantha got the letter from the health department approving the septic system design yesterday.
Questions from the board?
I think I have just two quick ones. With respect to so you're lifting up the house 2 feet.
Yes.
Right, so we're gonna jack up the house and we're gonna build on top of, I assume, the existing foundation wall?
We're going to put an inner foundation wall, pour concrete, and then fill the top exterior with stone to match the existing foundation.
That was where my question was going, so it'll be actual real field stone.
There will be
put up
real
against-
stone on the outside, right?
From the exterior, I want to try to maintain the rubble look.
Got
because
it.
That's what
And you have the thickness of the old foundation wall to accomplish that.
We do.
So we're gonna get the real stone.
the real
not-
stone.
Yes,
The real
yes,
stone.
not here,
Okay.
right.
And not stamped concrete or something. And then, just secondly, in one of the photos, it looked like the asbestos siding covers up a good portion of the former window trim, right? We still see the shutter details attached, but it looks like all the dimensional relief between what was the siding underneath perhaps and the outside of the trim. In old houses, the trim would stick out quite a distance away from the siding. It seems to be swallowed up by that. Do we have any sense if that's still there underneath that siding, or is there a plan to
I mean,
recreate
Samantha's
that?
been itching to remove the siding to see what's underneath, so we can assess. First of all, we want to know for sure what those funny little windows upstairs are that we want to get rid of, because we believe they're originally windows the same size as the other windows, not the strange little square windows over there now. But we have every reason to believe they'll have a decent depth once the shingles are removed, just because of the way they overlap and kind of, as you say, obscure the detail around the windows. But
And I think one of the intentions that Warren and I have talked extensively about is that just as we take off the siding, figuring out as much original detail that we can't see now because of it, to then bring that back into the thinking and to make sure that we restore whatever it is we can't see as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the one spot that isn't there for us to see today.
Yeah, right.
As thorough as Michael and Jeff's report is,
Okay.
it's the thing that could be gone and might need to be recreated, or
Yes.
is the thing that's hidden and
Yes.
would want to be delicately removed I
Yeah.
guess would be the word, the
There's-
siding delicately
there's
removed
a-
from it,
There's a lot of delicate demo, I would say, that we're intending with this one.
but the
Trying to
intent
keep
is
as much-
just
Yeah, trying to
to
keep
restore
it,
original window trim,
It
whether
is.
it's there or not.
Absolutely.
Okay.
yes.
So in the rendition and the elevation, these tiny little funny, these are ones you were calling the funny little ones,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So they are going to be replaced with like,
Yes,
That's the intention. I mean, we feel pretty confident that once we remove the siding, because the inside's been, covered with sheet rock too,
yeah.
we're gonna see for sure what the openings were. But even the original historic district listing in 1979 noted them as probable later replacement windows, and it just makes sense. One of those little spaces was actually turned into a kitchen for the legal third apartment, and the other one was, I'm not sure what that
It was
was.
a storage closet, but it's when you're inside of the house, you can see kind of around those windows that it looks pretty clearly like they've closed in something
shadow,
else.
yeah.
Like you can kind of see the shadow or like feel it in the wall. So when we actually open up the walls, we'll know for sure what that window is supposed to look like.
We are taking a porch with 5 columns and making it a porch with 4 columns and removing evidence of the 2-family front. Just want to make clear everybody's okay with that.
That is-
I mean, I think it fits the new house better
It's not a
than what's there
two-family
now.
anymore.
It's kind of strange to have the 1 column in the middle of the sidewalk with 2 doors.
Right, right.
But I just wanted to make sure everybody realized that's what's happening.
Very fair point.
And there's 2 other things. The site plan that was distributed to us still shows the 3-car garage with the apartment above.
There was a subsequent one submitted,
So the one you have here that we're gonna
that's been
approve,
submitted to too, yeah. Yeah,
Has that
so what
been-
happens is, right, so we're showing the garage, as I say, the existing garage where it is. The driveway still shifts, but because we're arriving here and the entrance to the garage is here
Okay.
on the east side, the driveway will then angle over to the sort of existing backup area, if you will, in front of the
so
garage.
I just wanna make sure we have an up-to-date
You do,
Yeah.
version.
yeah, yeah.
And third, the driveway. I went out and looked at that tree again. It's a beautiful
It's a big oak.
24-inch tree. And if you put the driveway there, there's only about 15 feet or so between that and the property line. So you're gonna be right up against the edge of that tree, which I don't, and it's kind of hupped up where the roots have developed underneath, I'm sure. So I'm not sure that I think it's a good idea to move the driveway. Isn't there a way that you could, I imagine you want to move the driveway a little away from the house?
Just to give the house some breathing room.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, to
So
come
you
in
could
and jog
come in
over and
and
jog
curve
back would
it.
be kind of strange, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think you're gonna damage that tree if you move that driveway so close to the roots of that tree.
I mean, there definitely is a little more room here with the driveway right against the house to the tree than there is on the other
Yes.
side.
And the roots have adjusted to it, whereas there, it looks to me like the roots have sort of mounded up on the west side, where if you put a driveway in, you're gonna have to cut some pretty primary roots. And you'll only be 3 feet or so away from the trunk, which isn't good for that tree.
No, I understand. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
ideally, you want to be beyond the drip line. but
Yeah,
none of-
ideally.
None of them are that.
It never happens in the village, but yeah.
Right, right.
So I would suggest we leave the driveway where it is and manipulate the rest of it to give you breathing room, even if it's not straight back. But that's my suggestion. I don't know what the rest of the people think about it. John?
Is this the tree?
Yeah.
The tree tree, right.
Okay, so this is the newer proposal here.
That's
Right.
correct.
And you're saying it's too close to this tree, probably.
Yeah.
I see that. And here's the existing, so you're suggesting keep the existing entry.
And, move it 3 or 4 feet to the left or whatever, to get it away from the house, so you can have some landscaping between the house and the driveway or whatever you want. But I just don't see putting the driveway that close to that tree. It
Yeah, I
just
mean, we
looks
can
like a
push
real
it as-
healthy
We
tree.
can push it as close to the property line as possible, but that won't necessarily totally remove that as a
Yeah.
concern.
What, push it closer to the property line this way, what is this? This is along the property line here?
That is a property
There's,
line.
yeah,
This
there's
tree.
one tree that's kind of, there's a slope down from 6 to 810, and that tree is actually sitting in the slope. So the driveway that was kind of why we turned the driveway at that point, so that we don't encroach on the roots of that tree.
Yeah. But the best tree on the property is that oak on the corner there.
Because we certainly could push the driveway into, part of it against the property line and just, then angle it to avoid both those trees.
I paced it out, and it looked to me like you only had about 15 feet between the trunk of the tree and the property line, where you can see the change where the fence used to be. And, if that's gonna be a 10 or 12-foot driveway, it doesn't give you much space.
Right.
The only saving grace is that it's an oak, so the roots would be deeper than it would if it was
Yeah,
a maple or
but
something.
it is
still-
mounted up between the curb and the sidewalk,
Yeah, it is.
so you're gonna have to cut something, I think.
Yeah.
I go back to the hospital, because I'd gone over when they were doing that with May Crawford. And she and I walked around and she pointed out all these trees, and the tree people in the village went crazy, you can't do anything. So it was like, don't get anything near. And she goes, with all the construction, you wait and see. You won't be near them with construction, but everything nearby is gonna cause those trees to eventually go. And go there now, look at all the trees on Route 9, and they're all going.
Yeah, but I don't think that the driveway is a main thoroughfare, like it would be anywhere. I mean, it's just a driveway that Samantha would be going in or out a couple of times a day. It's not like heavy trucks are going to be, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's still, in order to insert the driveway there, you're gonna have to
For the base.
pull it down 6 or 8 inches at least. Between the sidewalk and the curb, and that's where likely they're gonna have tree roots.
What's the grading plan? Is there any additional grading up towards the front of the house as you raise it up to 2 feet? Will
It's
you
a
be
very
adding-
level lot, which is why raising the house is kind of our only choice here to get it out of the ground.
Right, but I guess my question's more that, because you're gonna lift the house up, is there the ability to, instead of cutting for the driveway, do we have the ability to fill it all? So that we can bring the grade up around the tree roots a bit? So when we cut for our base, we're back to sort of virgin or slightly higher than virgin ground today, if it intersects the road correctly.
Yeah, I actually think you probably could, because the property, especially at the 6 Chestnut just next door, is about 2 feet higher. I mean, it slopes down very quickly, so you probably could actually fill that, and it would then not really affect the water flow on the property.
Right, because if we're starting at, call the tree roots today 0, and we added, say, +4 inches or 5 inches, and we cut that down and put a sub-base into, say, +1, we might be able to gain a little bit of fill over those tree roots if it intersected with the road properly.
To at least not have to cut down.
To not have to cut down
And the
into
intention
it.
is for the driveway to be permeable. So
But you have to come to the curb,
You have to come to the curb, but
to the street, which
depending on how that
Yeah.
works out, it might just be too
I'd
steep.
say the sidewalk is 6 or 8 inches above the street level.
Okay.
And you have 2 other trees in that area too. So you'd have to put tree wells around all those, because you can't fill around the tree trunk.
Yeah, that sounded good for me.
Yeah, the one tree to the right of the driveway actually is a smaller tree that is relatively recent, and we think we could probably relocate.
Yeah.
That's
Why I
the
was
intent.
hoping that maybe you could use the existing curb cut and bring the driveway around the house and back to the garage, and maybe adjust that smaller tree.
Right. I think probably for the other garage plan, that would have been worth hard keeping these in garage and getting that work.
What's the tree between the 2 driveways, the existing and the proposed?
It's a small maple, it's a fairly recent tree. It's, frankly, it's not actually growing particularly well in that location. So my intention anyway would be to move it to elsewhere on the property where it's not underneath such other big trees that it's kind of not able to grow.
So by extension of that thought, if we kept John's concept of existing curb cut, could we not start to throw the driveway away from the house after it entered the property a little ways?
Yeah, you could, it's just that we'd have to curve it back again to get to the
To
garage.
get to the
So
garage,
you'd have to
It
do
looks like where somebody,
Yeah, I mean, you could have like a,
puts in the curves and add a little variety, but it's kind of.
yeah, and then put something, puts a landscaping bed between the driveway or whatever to make it look like it's
I think
not
it'd be-
irrational.
Your plowing contractor is not gonna be happy with
No, but you do have a pretty good curve in there today.
I think a good compromise would be to say if you guys could try to do something like that, to raise it up a bit, to not have to damage the tree. Is that, people okay with that?
I think the driveway should stay where it is.
Okay. Other opinions?
I'm okay with the proposal.
Jeff?
With the proposed pave, well, just to get back to your suggestion, when you're saying move this even further to the
Yes,
lot line here,
yes.
Yeah, and then build up the base like 4 to 6 inches, so you wouldn't have to cut the tree roots, you'd be going over them.
yeah, how much does it appear, it's hard to say, you could move this if you moved it toward the lot line?
Yeah, it looks like maybe 4 feet.
Want a scale?
Is there is this an existing fence, is there a
No.
fence here? Will there be a
Not
fence?
anymore.
No. No, it was a really poor condition chain
Okay.
link fence that
All
was
right.
removed.
Karen, what do you think?
You know, I'm in favor of John's comment about keeping the curb cut. And I'm sort of struggling with why we couldn't just sort of gradually accomplish a goal of moving it away from the house and still get to the same spot, because, I mean, that's nothing to make the plow person happy either. Right?
Right.
You already have that, so if we started here, I do feel like we can gain over this distance some separation to the house. It may not be the ultimate amount
Right.
you were looking for.
Right, well, to the extent that the proposed change driveway is coming in at the center of that area in the back, not, all the way up against the house, what you're saying is a strategy that could work. We could simply curve in that direction instead of curving.
Yeah, and then that way you at least stay away from the street tree, which it sounds like we agree is the most
Right.
special tree on the property.
I think that's probably doable.
I think that works for me. I think my primary concern of moving the driveway over is that the prior owners had extensive water problems in the basement, which was part of the reason we wanted to lift the house. But the driveway against the house is a large contributing factor to the water going in the basement on that side, because you can see where it's running off into the basement. So that was why I wanted to shift it over. I'm happy with that solution.
Yeah, I
If we
think
keep the
we
cut
do.
and curve it kind of like we had, but just
The other way.
Yeah, because I think it will get you the ability to grade on the house a little bit,
Yes.
and then if you pitch the driveway off to the
Yeah.
direction you want the water to go, I think it could accomplish what you're trying to do in an elegant way.
So are we agreed on the compromise then?
Yes.
Good.
Any other questions about the project?
Do we have to do any kind of demolition on the little shed there? I mean, Jeff said it can go. Is there any kind of historical thing, or do we just have to legally say?
You want to knock down the shed?
We want to remove it, yeah.
it's in poor condition.
How big is it again, square feet? Do you know?
I don't have
Well, actually, it says in the updated listing, well, he says 1 day by 2 days, but it's like 10 by 25 or something. We went inside it.
Big enough for us to-
It's not old, I mean, it's 1940s, and it's not particularly special. But as I noted, back in 1979, it was deemed non-contributing. 40 years later, it's contributing, the magic of time. That doesn't make it any more special than it was, and I don't think too much has been done to it in the intervening time. So, it's only contributing by virtue of its age now.
I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
demolition. Does anyone else have a problem or want to go through the whole process?
No,
Does
this
it have a
construction is actually
No.
pretty
It does not
flimsy.
appear to have, no, it's just a dirt floor.
So I
Yeah.
think you could rule it as sort of a
Temporary
long-term
structure.
temporary structure.
Temporary structure.
Okay.
It would fall over pretty easily, I
Yeah.
suspect.
If there are no other questions or comments, then can I have a motion to approve the renovation of 810 Chestnut Street?
With the
With any conditions?
With the conditions that Darren and John described regarding, if we're approving it, we're approving the site plan, right?
Right, and we don't have the site plan. I mean, we have
Right,
to
but
say,
with the condition, the site plan be adjusted for that compromised driveway.
Right, and also, I suppose, the findings of the site visit, right, that they're incorporated in.
Right. Did you make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
But if I make the motion on the condition, is the condition clear enough that we suggested that the existing driveway cut be retained and that the newer driveway angle away from the house, right, to
Right.
avoid water issues? Okay?
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in
John?
favor?
Aye.
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 Right.
Congratulations, and thank you so much, both
Of course.
Samantha and Warren, for the hard work of preserving a very important building in the historic district. We
Very excited
appreciate
to do it.
everyone's efforts and expense in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Being part of the effort too.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
New business, Rain Spa, 20 West Market Street, you want to change the sign.
Yes, so, can I just stand here?
Oh, do we have
Sure, yeah,
any
of
chairs?
So,
We didn't put any chairs out for the visitors.
yeah, so we have the salon right next door, so we just want a new sign to make them match. That's pretty much it. Yeah, because it's like the same business, so we just want it more like unified. Yeah, and the old one is kind of outdated. We don't want it anymore. Yeah.
You're Megan Martino?
I'm her sister, her flight got delayed.
Oh, okay.
Michaela Martino,
So-
yeah.
All right.
And you have the picture of it, you want to bring that up? There it is, Rain. And it's black on white.
Yes.
I know John did not like black on white.
I know, but they already have one, so they're gonna match the color of the existing, so I'm not gonna
Yeah.
complain about it.
So we're not changing the size or anything, no change, no size.
No.
It's
There's
exactly
one
as it is.
problem with this sign. No projecting sign may extend more than 5 feet from the front plane of the principal structure. This comes out on a very long bracket.
That's
It's
been there.
probably at least 10 feet wide.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Yeah, that one's been there, that post, whatever that is.
I know.
It's long.
But
yeah.
it should be pulled back on the post to where it's no more than 5 feet from the,
Okay,
Do you want me to, I never checked the previous approval.
you
For
need
when
to
their
find out
first
whether it had a
sign-
variance or something.
If they had a variance or it was continued, before Rain Spa was even in there.
Yeah.
Because technically, they don't own the building. It's owned by Mr. Banta.
Right.
So I think for them to try to change anything, I think it would be a difficulty on their report as a tenant to change an aspect that's a part of that building. That's
Well-
been a part,
All they would have to do
Forever.
is move the sign closer to the building on the bracket, the existing bracket.
Was it
at
because
their
the
expense, because I can
adjacent
tell you,
building sticks out beyond it though?
it's
Is that
not
the
gonna
logic
be
to it?
absorbed
that?
in the
Doesn't the
landscape.
adjacent building stick out?
Has the
from
sign
it?
been hung yet? It hasn't been hung yet,
no.
No.
so it has to be hung.
The new one is their existing one, which is a different lettering with a palm kind
That's
of
all the way out.
background and a beige background.
That's
That's
all the way out.
existing.
I think there's two different sidewalk levels and could be, and I don't know for sure, but I think the Beekman Arms building projects out close to the sidewalk.
It does.
And this
Little
was
firehouse.
a firehouse, which is set back in, so in order to get visibility on a sidewalk, which is why it would have extended that pole out.
So
Well,
it's
there
5
is a
feet from
bay, a projection on the firehouse itself, where the other sign is hung, that you could interpret as being the front plane of the building, rather than where this side of the shop is.
This one, I think you might be thinking of the salon one, where Oliver Kita's was. That one goes out towards the sidewalk, and the one with the new sign is like back.
I
and
know.
it's like, oh, you know, okay, yeah.
So
So
what I'm
that's why it's
saying
so
is,
long.
if you measure from
Yeah.
the extension, which is all part of this one building, you could say that's the front plane of the,
I mean, I can check back
Principal
at
structure.
the minutes when they first moved in, but from my recollection, this was not an issue when they first moved in, so.
yeah.
I don't know how you can make it an issue for them now when they're just changing the lettering and the background.
Well, in
Yeah.
theory, you want to bring it into compliance with
Because
the
you
code.
guys have been there, what, 10 years now? You
Yeah,
guys
we-
moved in 2012, right?
Yeah, we've been there for a hot minute, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how far this provision of the code goes back either, whether it was put forward in the, whenever this was
Okay.
adopted. There's no date on this code, so I don't know. Can't remember.
Actually, no, the business itself is 10 years old, but this location we moved, so we do that November 2017.
You were next to the pizzeria.
Yeah, so this actual location, we've been there 3 years, so I don't think anything's changed within 3 years.
We didn't say anything 3 years ago.
All right, I'm just citing the code. We would have to say that this is grandfathered because of the existing sign position.
Okay.
Yeah, it would seem the logic was applied that if you're headed south towards this building, you wouldn't see the sign because of where the Beekman Arms is in relation to the front of this building, so they wouldn't get that southward
Yeah,
visibility.
I think
So
it's
they
farther
did
out
allow-
than it should be visually, but I'm not gonna drag out the issue.
Okay.
Is there lighting on this sign?
No,
I think so. Or, no, actually, no, there's not.
there's gooseneck lights
It's
that
on
light
the
up the
actual
front of the building, where
Yeah,
there used to be a sign probably.
yeah,
But this projecting sign doesn't have any, it's just a long plain bracket with hooks and coming down.
does it need lights, or is it allowed to
No.
have lights?
No.
No,
No.
right, okay, yeah, no.
Well, it's allowed to have lights, but you'd have to put in new gooseneck
Okay.
downlit.
Okay,
You can think about it and come back if you really wanted lights.
okay.
Can I have a motion to approve the new sign with the condition that we're grandfathering in the very long pole?
I'll make that motion.
Do you have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Who was the second?
I don't know if anyone was, I'll be the second,
Okay,
Karen.
there.
Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Third item is,
Next time a new business comes in there, we probably should, if a new
Should
business.
address that.
It may last a millennium, who knows?
Where was the, didn't we just approve the Botox place right above this? That was in Bear Signs?
Yes.
Like 2 meetings ago?
it was a Botox, yes,
They had
That's
the
next
sign-
door.
Right, they brought the sign in with them,
yes.
and
Yep.
I went up that night.
And Justin measured it, it's well above.
Because I had asked the question about
Stand-
height, but not the
He
projection.
measured it, it's
outside.
well above, yeah, he says it's like 9 feet off the sidewalk.
It was plenty high.
But it's on that same pole, right?
No, it's on a different one.
It's on a different pole.
There's two poles.
Yeah.
There were two stores. She owns both of them now, or, I mean, rents both of them.
Right,
Yeah.
and then that's the.
88 Montgomery Street is the next item on the agenda. We,
So our architect is en route, but since he's not here, we will, obviously, whatever you want to do, we can reschedule, or we can just wait for him to arrive and redo the order, but it's your decision.
We can wait. I think we can wait, guys, because we've got the next one that you're probably gonna talk about quite
Okay,
a bit, so
well,
we can.
if you want to wait, we'll see.
Of course, yeah,
see when
if you're
do you
willing
think
to,
he'll arrive?
he is on his
Alright.
way, so.
we'll move on to the last item on the agenda. We have some discussion. Okay, 42 West Market Street.
Okay.
Now-
I have the letter, Mr. Chair, and I can read it in for the record.
Okay,
David Miller, dated November 23rd, 2022. David Miller, Chairman, Village of Rhinebeck, Planning Board, 76 East Market Street, Rhinebeck, New York. Request for a site plan waiver for 42 West Market Street. Dear Mr. Miller and Planning Board members, at the request of my client Nathaniel Charney, we are seeking site plan waiver for his commercial renovation project located at 42 West Market Street in the Village Center Zone District. This parcel is located in the Historic District overlay. Mr. Charney is undertaking a moderate interior renovation. That really doesn't apply to you guys. However, there will be a slight technical improvement at the rear of the building, which I have discussed with Ryan Dowden and Ken McLaughlin. They explain that exterior changes normally trigger site plan review in the historic district overlay, especially when occurring at the public front facade. The building currently has mechanical air conditioning provided by seasonal double-hung window AC units, and Mr. Charney would like to replace them with high-efficiency air source heat pumps and mini-split units. This will result in 2 new small exterior mechanical units located in the fenced backyard close to the rear wall. Line sets will be run within the exterior walls rather than the typical method of plastic conduit mounted to the exterior.
The interior walls.
The line sets will be run within the exterior walls rather than the typical method of plastic conduit mounted on the exterior. A positive consequence of this improvement will be permanent elimination of all AC units sticking out of the front facade windows. Secondly, there's a small set of wooden steps coming out of the rear exit door into the backyard. This feature is likely less than 10 years old with no historical value and does not meet building code standards of safety. We are mandated to rebuild them to code as they are needed as a second means of egress from the building in the event of an emergency. The immediate rear yard of this parcel is fully enclosed by an existing zoning compliant 54-inch tall fence with 12-inch lattice top that connects to each rear corner of the building. Neither of our proposed changes will be visible to the public side of the property or from surrounding parcels to the sides and rear without great effort. Due to the lack of visible impact to the surrounding parcels and street, we are requesting that site plan review be waived in this case. Mr. Charney plans on having his contractors do their work starting in January at the latest in order to take occupancy prior to his current rented location's lease expiring in February. To that end, we will be submitting architectural plans for a building permit issuance next month. Thank you for your consideration of this matter. If you have any questions or require any further information, please contact my office at your convenience. They've attached, there's attached photographs, respectively submitted, Robert J. DuPont, architect.
Now, we talked about this last week, Michael and I and Ryan at the pre-meeting.
So if you keep scrolling, Jeff, are the
It's a mini
photos.
split, and it's going to
So
be.
that's the backyard looking at Marabou. That's the backyard.
Higher.
And there's the
The
back
side.
of the building.
There's one more that shows it, right. So he's going, that's the back,
That's the back.
he's gonna replace
And
those
the
steps.
yellow area, that's where the mini splits are gonna go.
And those are the steps he's
the-
gonna replace.
Yeah.
To the backyard, you can't see it from the street. They said, I thought they were gonna put it inside, I don't know how they're gonna hide it outside, unless they're gonna replace the siding, which they didn't say. I didn't quite understand what the exterior means.
It said inside the exterior, which
Yeah.
to me, I would read that as you're drilling a hole in the
And going somehow up.
inside, but that's not clear, so I think maybe,
I don't hang HVAC on my.
So they wanted to know that, being in the fact that they're removing the window units, which are hideous, they're gonna have these mini splits buried in the backyard behind the fence, not visible to anybody, except somebody coming out of the front door of the Mirabou perhaps.
you didn't have to be above the
Right.
Have
the
it
second or
out
third floor.
Yeah, I know. So they felt, do we have to do anything, since we're not really changing anything in special workers? There's no signage requests.
Well, you're
Did they have to come to the planning board?
putting a new, set of stairs and, a building code compliant thing there by that door, that is exterior, and because it's historical, in the historic district, I just think we just need to say, show it, and we're fine with it, but I don't think site plan waiver, because they just don't want to come here, is appropriate.
I don't see anything in the code that allows us to waive site plan.
Yeah.
So,
You know, the applicable paragraph says all building and zoning permit applications in the village center district shall be subject to site plan approval.
So we want to do the work in January.
Well, they're already working there, because I've seen the contractors going out and loading stuff up into it. Do they have a building permit?
I doubt they have anything for demo. They're probably moving stuff out of the former owner, because the former owner used it as residential.
But if you're doing demo, that's,
I mean, if you're tearing up
I mean,
carpets and things like
I
that,
don't know, but they had
that
a
doesn't
dumpster
necessarily,
on the back of a pickup, and they were bringing stuff in. It's not major, but they're already
It's a fine
starting.
line between maintenance and renovation that,
Is this gonna be a commercial business?
it's a
Professional
law
office. Attorney's office.
So it's changing from residential to an office use?
Mixed use. This woman had, she came and got a variance. This was a very interesting case that I looked up. She had a retail business on the first floor, and then she had a service business on the second floor, and she got a variance for it. There's extensive minutes on this location from years ago. So, but because they're in the village center business district, a professional office is a permitted use by right.
So they don't have to go through site plan just to,
Just open up attorney's office now.
they just have to come for a sign application if they want one.
Yeah, which he hasn't decided on what kind of sign he
But
wants.
to me, it does, there's nothing in the code that says we have the right to waive that I can find. If they want to find a spot in the code where it says that, I think what they're doing is minimal, but
if they would have come tonight, we could have
Yes, it
approved
would have
it.
been done.
I was gonna say, couldn't this be the site plan approval process right now?
But we can't do it with empty chairs.
yeah, but I guess they just don't want to pay the fee. That's the only thing I can think of, or they think it's going to get drawn out or whatever. I think you could tell them that from what we see, this would be a one meeting
Sure.
approval and they could have it January, whatever it is.
Third.
But put them on the calendar for January 3rd.
Sure.
Yeah, because I don't see how we have the right to waive unless somebody
No.
can find something different in here.
I don't think we have any problem with this, it would have taken 5 minutes, but, okay.
It's nice to see this building going to be used for something public.
I think there was a concern over the windows. I think there was a concern of what previous owners have done to the building, that, you know, once you open site plan, it's like opening up Pandora's box, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you're now have to, you know, take responsibility for a previous owner's mistake, so.
Now, tell him, we'll only judge him by what he's bringing changes, and that,
But,
from what we see, it'll be a 10-minute thing.
but they still have to apply for a building permit, and that's up to some other authority to look over the stuff, the steps and the railings or whatever it is,
And the renovation work
and the
inside.
renovation work
It
inside.
looks like
However,
the
they're gonna
building's
make
really
offices.
pretty intact,
Yeah,
in good shape.
it's a very old building, all those buildings on,
40 years ago, it was under the apple tree, which was basically a craft artisan's little creations, and hundreds of these little things that my wife was in there all the time, oh, I want that, I want this.
All right,
all right, so we're still waiting, we'll continue. So we have this lead agency form
oh, yeah.
that we're supposed to vote on, so are we taking a vote that we consent to the village board serving as lead agency? If they do that, then that means we're not involved in site plan review?
No,
Not necessarily no, Chair. I mean, if you look at the first page, there's a signature required, the deck page, the very first page. There's a signature required by you as planning board chair. I think that's basically what you guys are addressing tonight, to make sure that what's in the resolution you guys are comfortable with, and what's in the EAF form, and how those questions were answered.
We just,
I'm sorry, lead agency for what?
The Brogan Center.
It's rezoning, right?
It's lead aid, you guys are signing that the planning board agrees with the village board as lead aid agency for the seeker process.
And when the secret process is over, they will come
I'm sorry.
to us for site plan approval.
Yes.
Sorry, can you say that again, Ryan? The planning board agrees?
I really don't, it says it right on the front page from the mayor, what this all means.
We agree to have the village board be lead agency for the seeker process. If the seeker process is approved and the public hearings and so on, and then there's a site plan presented, then the site plan comes to the planning board for approval or any variance recommendations if
Right,
anything
but
or
seeker would
anything
be
else.
done in terms of overall traffic impacts and,
Right.
so,
Well, and a good point was made at the town board meetings that they're actually reviewing it on two fronts, right? Because they're considering a zone change to allow what they're proposing to happen, but they're using the proposal put forth by the developer as a real-life case study. So they're not just evaluating a concept of a zone change, but they're actually looking at this project and saying, what will it actually mean based on what this project is proposing? So in a way, it's sort of a double secret review, and it's gonna come to us for input, and that's what the mayor said, it would come to us and
So it'll come to
for lots
us.
of input, but it would come to us fully baked after that.
Right,
in
and
terms
there'd
of
be a change to the code that says there are 6, 7, 8, 9 apartments are allowed in this spot. And then we can just go right ahead with site plan approval.
yes. But
According
I don't
to-
think it's
yeah,
baked.
according to whatever the
I think they're
new
using
code
it
is.
as a concept plan.
Yeah,
And
But-
so, when it came to us for site plan approval, we could make changes.
for sure.
Oh, yeah, no, yes, because,
For the rezoning, I think it's appropriate that the village board be the lead agency,
and change the
which is the
code.
primary action.
I agree.
Okay, so we're consenting to agree that the village board will serve as lead agency, and the seeker make the zoning code. If all that happens, then it comes to us for site plan review.
And things like the number of units and the mix of units will probably be determined by the zoning. But the actual arrangement on the property would be up to us during the site plan.
So they would do traffic, they would do parking
Yeah, for a set number of units.
for a set number of units, and then it would just come to us. We could go over landscaping.
But I do feel like there'll be a significant need for us to be very vocal in the secret
Yes.
process, because, yes, it won't come to us fully baked, but I think it'd be hard to send them back to the drawing board after some.
Yeah,
right?
you
So
couldn't
I
say,
think-
oh, we're gonna just take away those two houses and, you
Right,
know.
right, so I think, I'm comfortable as long as there's some mechanism in there that we have ample notice and we get to see documents in a way that gives us time to look at them and think about them and understand them, because I do feel like we'll have to somewhat comply with what gets through SECR.
Yes.
Well, if the code is changed, then if it's, X number of units and X number of houses are all allowed, Board of Health is enough septic, would that be part of the secret process? The septic, the driving, the parking
Well,
allocation?
the Board of Health would never approve anything in advance of site plan.
Okay,
So they'll conceptually agree on, say, the size of a necessary unit or that sort of, necessary field or whatever. But the actual final layout would be
Yeah,
part of site
so,
plan.
no.
And then it would go to the health department for final approval.
because we haven't done seeker, really formal seeker in a very long time. It's always, all those declared lead agency, all those in favor, aye. Seeker, all those in favor, aye, because with such, those are all minimal things. Now it's a real project.
Well, it's like Mirabou,
It's like Mirabou, it's a
Yeah.
real project. Or,
which is significant enough that you actually hire consultants and do a traffic study and those sorts of things.
or the Casa Mazzarella Park, but that was handled by the town. The village gave up its rights and we handled that. The town handled lead agency for that. Okay, so is everyone agreeable? Do you want me to say, on behalf of the planning board, consent David Miller? Is that what you want?
You're the chair, I mean, I think that's,
Yeah.
that's the protocol.
Okay.
I think we should have a formal vote on it.
That's what I was gonna
That,
ask.
that
So,
we agree as, that to consent to the village board being lead agency.
for the minutes, okay.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So on behalf of the Village of Rhinebeck Planning Board, have to make very small, consents David Miller. Okay?
Yeah.
Good.
The village board is gonna hire a planning consultant to run this process, right? So in theory, they would have seeker experience and be able to walk you guys through it.
Yeah. We already have escrow set up with the property owner.
I didn't hear that.
We already have escrow set up with the property owner.
Okay,
What's today, the 6th?
I don't know where we are, but we sent that letter out to 7 or 8 different interested agencies, potentially interested agencies,
yeah.
once we get all of them back.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is
The architect hasn't shown yet?
No,
He's-
he's on the
So if you need to end, obviously.
Okay.
we still have talking to do, so. So, the zoning sections and the planning board approval. We had a lot of comments at the last meeting, and rather than have the subcommittee make up a report, thought it'd be just good, everybody got a chance to voice, you know, their opinions as to what could be done to make this process easier. And I think, in my opinion, if I can go first, I usually wait for last, but is that, what we need to do is change the section of the code that says, the only buildings in the village that are on the historic register and not in the village historic district are the new ones, 110 or 20 new ones. You could just change the thing to say that everybody, every house on the National Historic Register should come to the planning board. Would that solve, that's my suggestion.
Yeah, there are 2 ways, or 3 different ways that we kind of talked about it, was, because right now, as you know from the lawyers, the 2 laws are well, they're not in conflict with each other, they're just, we've captured some of the buildings, but we haven't captured others of the buildings. So there's and this is all, by the way, this is a temporary fix until the
Right.
recommendations of the comprehensive plan have come forward and we do a bigger zoning code overhaul. Because I think that they're already recommending that we actually combine 64 and 120-39. But, you know, with the expansion of the historic districts, the National Historic District, it expanded both the footprint and it expanded the definition, the period of significance to 1970. And so, you know, we can expand the footprint, we can expand the period of significance, we can do both, or we can do none of it. And it seemed sort of the easiest fix, and the simplest fix, is to just have the historic district overlay match the footprint of the National Historic District, and then expand the contributing building period of significance to 1970 because we have that really big report. And that way a contributing building in the federal and state district is a contributing building in the Rhinebeck district. That was kind of the easiest way to think it through. I fully appreciate that there are some concerns from those of us, from those members of the community, including some of you, that you know, is the gas station really a contributing building? So, yeah, I'd be happy to hear all of your thoughts on this. And to be clear, I have yet to have a conversation with someone that agrees that their thoughts agree with anybody else's thoughts. You know, there's a lot of confusion about it and all the rest of it. But my goal here in the next couple of months is just to figure out a way to make your lives easier and to make sure that buildings that you believe need to be protected, neighborhoods that need to have their the feel of the neighborhood protected are protected.
Well, I explained to Lydia that, we were very difficult last time because we were in this gap between the two laws. We treaded it very lightly, but it was fortunate that the architects that came said, we realize the building's on the historic register, and we intend on using the appropriate materials, the appropriate windows, which was very, very nice. But there's a for sale sign further down towards Route 9 on Platt Avenue.
Yep.
And that scares me that, we need to do something. Of course, the vacant lot on Mulberry Street is not historic dirt, so you can't, they could build anything, the black house with picture windows, because we don't have any way of, we haven't done that yet, unless you can't quickly expand the bubble, so.
We can expand the bubble in the
Because
next.
you have Jennifer's map. Lauren, did you get that material on Google Docs? Everybody got that yet?
Mhm.
Oh, good, so you go see all the maps? Everything I got from Jennifer at Chippewa, good.
Yeah.
Well, one of the maps is Jennifer's map of the district.
Yeah, we can expand, I mean, we can, like, literally, the change is just, instead of referring to the master plan page 27, we refer to a different one, or we just incorporate the map from the 2021,
Well, there's a problem with that, and that's what we ran into with Platt Avenue, is that our design criteria
right,
don't give us the right tools to deal with things in the expanded definition of controlling, right? The newer survey contains a lot of 70s houses and 60s houses and things like that, including capes on Platt Avenue, where this applicant came in and essentially proposed 1930s details. They proposed turning it into a colonial. And that, seemed like the closest thing to make us happy based on our existing code. Maybe what they wanted to begin with, but, they couched it as that. But it gets a little more awkward if someone comes in with, a true mid-century ranch house and,
they want to keep it
we're
that
telling
way.
them vertical proportions to windows and add,
Yeah.
color schemes that are of the 1930s and earlier.
I mean,
So-
there's the Secretary of Interior's kind of 15 things to think about that, they're very broad, and we could use those as kind of a temporary stopgap. I mean, we could keep the ones that we have for pre-1930s buildings, and we could add, the Secretary of Interior's design standards for post-1930s buildings, which would basically allow, a good mid-century modern house to allow to remain a mid-century modern house, basically using the discretion of the planning board.
Yeah, I'm afraid what's easy in the short run is not gonna be easy in the long run.
Right.
Because it's very easy to change the code and say, this is the simplest solution to meld the two portions of the code. But it's gonna, first of all, require us as the planning board to see many more potential buildings that have screen porches on the back that you need, or new gables, or, little things like the back steps of that house we just looked at. And we're gonna have 110 new of those out there, and people are buying up those houses, the smaller houses, and wanting to make them big, just like the person on Mulberry did. So it's gonna create a lot more work for us.
Right.
And
Well, last time.
I guess I'm a traditionalist and sort of old school, that I can't imagine that some of those houses on Platt Avenue are really what I would consider historic and want to save. And so it puts us in a really awkward position. I think we can there's only a few, is vinyl now a historic material? Because it was created in 1960 or whatever. I don't know when vinyl first came
I
on,
don't either, but-
but I'm sure it dates back to before 70.
No, fair.
I
Yeah,
said to
so
Lydia-
aluminum siding and vinyl is all historic materials now, and how do we deal with that?
Right.
Because now we say, okay, on these houses it's okay, but on these houses it's not. It gets very complicated, because then we really sort of have to have a pre-war and post-war set of design standards that have different standards, because I look at these and I say, they're not built for ranch houses.
Well, the
And
pattern
capes.
book, right, could sort of shy away from synthetic materials and go to the more pure materials used at the time, I suppose. But your point's a good one, right?
Yeah.
It'd be hard for us to.
So I
argue
would
against it.
suggest something different. And
Well, we had talked about potentially cherry picking the properties out of the survey that
Yes.
either the town or the.
to set up a
CPC.
committee of maybe a couple planning board, or a member of the planning board, and some historic architects and preservation types, to go through the expanded district and say, these are what we really consider historic. Not just everything numerically up to 1970, which makes no sense to me at all, and I think it's just, was the stupidest thing in the world. And the only reason it got passed, because it was in the pandemic and nobody came out to comment on it.
Right.
That's what I remember. I trusted Neil Larson, and I think he screwed us.
I did too, and Mike Fraser does too. All three of us are very disappointed in Neil Lawson. It says may be considered, 50 years old, may be considered. And not must. He drew the line 1970 and put them all in there, including the gas station, I noticed.
So I would,
You know, and including 810 Chestnut's shed that we just saw, you know, that's now contributing structure.
So I don't know if there's a
Which
way
is
to
fine.
undo it.
you know, I would say we set up a committee and say, we definitely want to expand to include some of Oak Street and some of Platt Street, but they can have the National Register honor and get tax credits or whatever other benefits they get out of the national government, but in terms of required historic review by the planning board, it should be limited to those buildings that are, I would say, pre-1950 or something to that effect, or are exemplary examples of 1970s architecture. You know, so we say, oh, there's a great mid-century modern house out there, and we want to say, that's great, we recognize that, but for every ranch and cape to be thrown in just because they were built before a certain date just doesn't make sense to me. Even if they've been butchered and vinyl sided and.
Would it help if we didn't make every single thing that someone in the historic district wanted to do have to come to you for site plan approval?
That would be another option. I think, I've always looked at this, and even though I think I wrote the first version of this historic, did the draft. I think we should exclude things that are not visible from a public street.
Right.
So all these back screen door steps and things like that, we wouldn't have to deal with. It's the appearance from the street that's important. So if somebody wants to put a screen porch on the back or change the mud room or whatever, I'm not sure that we need to see it.
Well, and then there's
Warren just said he's going to take the back and make it look just like all the rest of the porch. And what's the point of that?
Well,
You can't
I
see
think
it
it's-
anyway.
I think it's fine if people want to put that extra money in, that's great. But it's,
Well,
I think our review should be visible from a public
Yes.
street or sidewalk.
Although there could be a neighbor impact, right? So you buy a house and there's this, beautiful, well-maintained, historic house next door, and then people start to add on, pool houses and screen porches and things that all of a sudden are in your field of view. There is a loss of charm there, I agree, not from a public street, but
Yeah.
a little bit of a depreciation in.
We have a pool, actually a recreation center pending that we have to deal with down the line.
And a good example, right?
That's a good example.
But, and then the other concept is just sort of streets, the pre-1950s thing, but then take some of the cul-de-sacs, Crossmore and Seymour, and back in that area, in the 1970s, 1980s neighborhoods back there, where there's a fabric to those neighborhoods. You walk through there and, they feel like you're in your childhood, or my childhood. I feel like
You grew up in New
it's the
Jersey,
street I
right?
grew up in New Jersey, houses built in, the 1970s, late 60s, and they're all pretty consistent architecturally with one another. So, throw that a little bit into the mix too. And I do feel like I have a concern that if the neighbor one wants to make a colonial out of theirs, and neighbor two wants to make theirs modern, there's something lost in those neighborhoods if we don't consider surrounding properties as well in this period.
So
of
you're
significance.
suggesting the possibility of expanding the footprint of the historic district to include those, 1960s? No, I'm just asking.
Well, ready for that.
In 10 years, you can do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's have that conversation in 10 years.
Right, but I think, when you get to that point, right, but I think this is the precedent, when we have the chance, when the window opens, I think, personally, so speaking completely personally, my opinion is that you know, we now have this giant list, and last meeting we talked about potentially looking at that list, a committee like John's proposing, and evaluating, you know, which properties might make the cut for needing some further review of the planning board, which I'm in favor of. Not saying everything on the list needs to have that level of review. And then secondarily, I think there's maybe two other things we want to consider in that selection process. One would be the context of the neighborhood, right? Sort of, is there a grouping of houses that together has a feel to it, you know, a charm, a period of significance unto itself that warrants the whole neighborhood, or the row of houses. Take South Street, for example, where there's a few crucifix-formed houses in a row. You know, if this was much longer ago, you might argue that those houses together form a grouping that is significant and important. So, not just the individual property, but maybe the context and the neighborhood. And then related to that also, now the National Park Service has brought in things, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, like landscape, right? So the landscapes are now contributing to the historic nature of properties. So we might want to consider certain elements, certain park features, certain landscapes, certain trees, certain aspects of the village, or things in proximity to those as something we should have some sort of say or some way of dealing with through some sort of pattern document or some set of guidance, or even deferring to the national standards on that. But it seems like, you know, if we chose responsibly, then the things that we really feel like we should talk about will come to us.
And we could also, the village board can declare historic districts that have nothing to do with Albany or Washington.
Right.
Jennifer Betzworth added Crystal Lake. Jennifer said, you guys should look at the Rhinebeck Cemetery, adding that into the historic
An example, right?
thing, because that has so many famous people buried. It's a very critical, very old, that could be added to it. And then we talked about, I only attended one meeting at the very beginning with John Rossi, Neil Lawson, and Jennifer Betzworth. I asked about Montgomery Street. She said, the hospital destroys it. I said, there are beautiful houses going down towards the Kill. You can't have it. Including the Rhinebeck Duchess Heat, Light, and Power, built in 1900 at Hogg's Bridge. No, you can't do it. And now that thing has got picture windows, the guy's building the railroad station back there. I don't know what's going on. It's massive construction going on for years. So I said, what about Montgomery? I mean, Mill, from the Benner House to Parsonage Street. There are like 7 gorgeous houses along that street. The board at SHPO would never approve, it has to be contiguous. It would never approve that street.
Makes no sense.
I can't add that. And that was the only meeting I attended, and that was it. But yet, I think someone pointed out, John, that the village board could say, well, that section of Mill is going to be added to the village historic section.
Yeah, we don't have to use
We don't have to
anybody's
use
maps
that.
but our own. We can make up a map.
These are 6 or 7 gorgeous buildings, some of the nicest in the village.
Well, that actually begs the question of, so I grew up on Capitol Hill in Washington DC. You know, there was a whole historic district commission. You know, the planning board here in Rhinebeck has always played both roles, of both planning board and a traditional kind of historic preservation commission. You know, obviously it would require finding people who have a lot of knowledge and interest in historic architecture, but, you know, I've kind of 2 questions, just because I'm aware of the time, but, you know, one, would it be helpful for the village to separate some of that role a little bit and create a separate historic district commission or historic preservation commission that would really sort of be focusing on the assets of the historic district, what, you know, and it could be up to 1970 if that was their only job. And then the planning board is free to be a planning board, and they were, you know, they handle historic, you know, things that are referred out from the historic commission, or however that would work. I need to do some research on that.
That's what Elizabeth has done, that they have a
Yeah, they've got that architecture
committee.
thing, yeah.
But don't they make a recommendation to the planning board, and the planning
Yes.
board makes the ultimate decision? And so you
Yes.
end up having to go and present before 2 different boards, and
Well,
you
yeah,
can get
that's not
conflicts
ideal.
between the 2 boards?
We always felt
Yes.
that that's a lot of work, that we could always handle it. There's not that many critical
Right.
things that come up, you know.
So I guess for the immediate short term, you know, now that we have that memo from David, that sort of defines where you have authority and where you kind of don't have authority with the existing laws. You know, would you rather that I, you know, reconvene a working group with perhaps a slightly different membership, to really think through this problem, you know, either as part of the comprehensive plan process or separate, or, you know, we're all thinking about this stuff anyway in the village at the moment, it just seems to be in the water. And the village board just kind of tables any zoning code changes at all. I mean, my goal was to try and, you know, all of you are really concerned about the black house on Platt Avenue and you know, and the empty lot on Mulberry Street, and I'm trying to figure out a way for, you know, the federal district to, you know, you can't just build a black house on Platt Avenue. But if that's not something that you feel a lot of time pressure on, I mean, some time pressure, but not like needs to be solved in the next 2 months, you know, we can create a working group and we can perhaps solve this in the next 6 to 8 months. I mean, this is really kind of I very much appreciate a recommendation from you all on this. And maybe I put the cart before the horse a little bit by thinking about this before coming to you and talking about it. But, you know.
Someone's gonna buy the house on Platt Avenue.
Somebody's gonna buy the house on Platt Avenue, somebody's eventually gonna buy that vacant lot on Mulberry, or they're gonna eventually come up with a design, or I don't know what's going
They're
on.
gonna buy something on Oak Street, or, you know,
Yeah, and right now they could put up a, you know, a glass and reclaimed wood, you know, super modern something. And, you know, some people think that would be really cool, but I think on Mulberry Street, that's probably not that appropriate.
Well, there's two issues, right? So what do we do in
Yeah.
the short term and the long term? So I
Right.
like
Do we
your
want to solve the
suggestion.
long-term problem, you know, in a medium-term solution? Or do we want to have like a short-term fix and then a subcommittee that's thinking about the long-term solution?
Well, without a short-term fix, we're in this gray area between the two chapters,
Yeah.
and we have standards set for 1930 and earlier.
Yeah.
So I feel like we need something the next time someone walks in with an application, to something concrete, to either say you don't need to be here, or we have these standards that will apply, or we'll limit our review to these specific things. So we don't go through what we went through last meeting and just
Right.
poke around, you know, potential things and ask questions, but without any real feeling of authority over it.
Right.
And can this be done in stages?
Totally, yeah. I mean, it can be done however we want to do it.
One of my biggest fears, or one of my greatest desires, frankly, is that Oak Street be protected. Oak Street has a lot of history, not just architectural history, cultural history, but there's a lot of small houses on Oak Street, and I would, at a minimum, like to see Oak Street protected now. If Oak Street were incorporated under the current code, wouldn't it be clearer to us? I mean, you know, one of the concerns we have is that if someone came to us with one of the more recent homes on Platt, for example, it would be very discretionary on our behalf what we're doing, because there currently is no pattern book for more modern architecture to guide us. But there is for Oak Street. I think the current code would cover Oak Street. And why couldn't we incorporate Oak Street into the historic district under the current code now? We're talking about a concern about a house on Platt Street moving. I'm concerned about houses on Oak Street.
Right, so
Oak Street is
expand,
contiguous, it's very,
so expand the
historic.
footprint to include Oak Street, but not for
and
the
West
moment.
Chestnut.
Yeah, and West
It's
Chestnut,
an L,
yeah, but not for the moment, you know, Platt and Mill.
parsonage.
and to John's point, Platt and those areas are more of the type that I think would take some thoughtful consideration by someone that's knowledgeable, to look at them more individually. Isn't that what happened with the original designation, that properties were individually evaluated?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
But there are 5 or 6 houses on Platt that are not in the current configuration that are just as valuable or would be you know, so you might wanna say, okay, we're gonna,
Maybe the short-term fix is like, keep the 1930s but expand the footprint, and then create a subcommittee, and then the
to
subcommittee
deal with the 70s
deals
stuff.
with the 1930s through
Yeah.
1970s
If you
stuff.
just approved Jennifer's map,
Yeah.
one of those, I think there were like 20 maps there, but
And
one
that
of them
would,
is the
yeah.
map of the new district.
And
And
that
approve
would,
that.
if we did that,
And
Then we
then-
would
that would
decide.
protect Oak Street. Everything in Oak Street is
Yes.
pre-1930s,
Yeah,
right?
I would think
Except for the
so.
two new houses that replaced the two that were demolished.
They were torn down on Oak Street.
Yep.
Yep,
This is my
And
concern.
they did really nice jobs on them, but
Yeah.
it's a crapshoot.
it's like us, it's a beautiful example of an arts and crafts building,
Yeah,
but it's new, you know, and so that's the two houses on Oak that look like that.
they were completely torn. You're not talking about the one that Scott Cruikshank
That's
renovated.
brand new. His foundation is now a stone wall in my backyard.
Really?
And across the street from him was got two guys that own hotels. That was Pete Simmons' house, and they were gonna
Okay.
renovate it, and they found so
Well,
much stuff, they just
All right,
demolished
I
it.
got the staircase, the interior staircase
Was
in
from
that
your
house
house.
came from our 1880
Right.
house that we had to tear down. And also the pattern, he took a piece of our front porch trim as a pattern for their front porch. At any rate,
yeah. I mean, so that's a short-term fix, is expand the envelope, but don't expand the period of significance.
And then see how we deal with it. You can't undo, you can't say, well, this house was 1965, we want to take it off the register. I don't know how you would do that.
Well, no, I mean, as long, they're all contributing buildings inside the Federal Register, like, that's done. So the question then for this subcommittee that I feel like I have a lot of volunteers for.
The discretion of the board, at the discretion of the board, we can say, we don't need to worry about this one. So in the
Yeah, I mean, so like.
the longer term.
Well, right, and so what would happen actually with this short-term fix of expanding the envelope is all of these new buildings, well, if we keep the period of significance up to 1930, then that only adds a handful of the new buildings to your, authority. But, so it would include like the big White House on Platt Avenue, but it wouldn't include, Steve Rosenberg's house on Platt Avenue.
Someone's worked on a beautiful house on Platt. We had to let them live in the garage. They did major work on there, and we were not involved in that at all.
Yeah, the little stucco one that,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
They did a nice job.
they did a great job, yeah. Okay, so that's kind of a short-term fix without dumping a whole bunch of stuff onto your laps.
There still is the problem that the demolition law applies to all of this new district.
Right, so
And
we'll,
so if somebody wants to knock off the roof and put a second story on, technically, they have to come to us.
right, so that actually begs the question of, do we want the demolition law to include everything up to 1970 as well?
Right now, it does.
Right now it does.
So you could
We could change, I mean,
change that to put that in the same significance period as the
We
historic district law.
I mean, my only concern about that, and I'm just gonna footnote it here, is, I'm channeling Tim Decker. This village is a series of neighborhoods that expanded over time, and if we only preserve the neighborhoods that were built, at a specific moment in time, pre-1930s, then we lose the history of the neighborhoods, like what Darren was talking about with the suburban development at Stortiniville. So my only concern is if we allow demolition on those buildings, then we are losing those assets before we've made a decision on whether or not we want to keep them.
Right.
It's,
Yeah.
Well, we
you
don't
could
have
make
good
the
rules to
definition
apply.
change about
anyway.
partial.
Yeah, we don't have good
We're not
rules.
really doing much.
Yeah, we don't have good rules to apply
To
to the
begin
redevelopment of them, but we, have a demolition criteria of is this really necessary and all of the rest of it.
If it's full demolition.
Yeah,
right? Because if it's a renovation, then it's back to that same criteria we don't
It's-
have, right? So we're
right.
evaluating it based on criteria that are wrong to
Right.
decide whether they can do the demolition. So
Right,
it seems like leave them out for now.
except
I
for
mean,
full
most,
demolition.
I mean, I don't know, Darren, based on supply chain issues now, can you foresee someone looking at
A full
a
demolition.
house and saying, I want a bulldozer, let's just take it all down and we're starting from scratch? Based
Yeah.
on the supply chain issues, rather than taking something and partially redoing it like what they're doing at 39 Platt Avenue.
Honestly, I could probably get 98% of what I wanted right now. You know, there's probably that 2% you can't to build a house, and you adjust and you get 100% of what you want. So I think this supply chain issue is a little still exaggerated. I think you can get it if you're looking for it and you're flexible enough to say, I'd take this over this.
I think the other thing you can consider is the size of these lots.
Well, that's my concern, especially with the lots on Platt Avenue, is, you know, someone can come on with a demolition permit for one of those 1960s split levels, and given the 35%, you know, thing in our law, could build a massive house on one of those properties.
Yeah.
Which would do- Which would
If
do,
they could comply to the setbacks.
They
Because
can.
if you have a driveway and
Yeah.
a garage, they're gonna,
But-
and they can't comply, they're
but
coming
certainly
here
a house
anyway.
that's much larger than what's currently on the
Platt
property.
Avenue between Platt and Chestnut is it's a strange thing, it's a massive, we had Tumalo was going to build a secret house in the back, in the middle between the blocks. There's a huge amount of space
Mhm.
between those two blocks.
I mean,
Those lots are really
If
deep.
they can't
Really
comply
deep.
with the setbacks, then they have to get variances. So they're coming to these guys anyway.
Yeah, but like she said, those lots are so big that you could demolish a house, a small house, and put up a giant house, and
Right,
still meet the setbacks and coverage easily.
yeah. And, you know, and that sort of speaks to the affordable housing, yeah, I mean, like, all of this kind of tumbles into everything else that we're all thinking about. So, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take all of this, I'm gonna send you all an email tomorrow. I'm working with Brant at the moment on how to kind of handle some of these edits. And we're gonna workshop, I'm hoping to workshop the question. This is not like a public hearing or anything, but I'm hoping to workshop the question in our village board meeting next week, where the five of us can talk about it. And, you know, I'll tell them that you and I had this conversation and this is how you're feeling about it. And we'll just keep up the dialogue. But, you know, in terms of a subcommittee, like, let me know if that would be something that you'd be willing to help me with. Aaron?
Well, I guess I was raising my hand for that, but I did want to mention, because I thought you were going the other direction of where you mentioned like a permanent subcommittee of the planning board, a historic board, a review board that would either make recommendations to or review on behalf of the planning board.
Right,
And before the topic escaped, I did want to express that personally, I don't feel it's a functional model,
Okay.
having appeared before both types of boards.
yeah, you've done work in the town, it's probably.
Done plenty of work in the town and other towns where that exists.
That's not
And,
great.
the problem with it is because it's planning, right? So this is land use, it's planning. So often solutions are born at the planning board level that might somehow conflict with something historic, and the compromise might be worth it, right? There might be some situation where we get something better and we're willing to let something go as a result. And the historic boards tend to be pretty focused and laser focused on things historic and can sometimes back you into a corner and
And
just
it's
even
double,
the
it's double the work for
technology.
the applicant.
Yeah,
It's double the work for the applicant, and it's very inconsistent, and
Okay.
so, anyway, I'm
An
having.
alternative would be to expand the board to 7 and put 2 historic preservation experts on the board, so that we have the input without having to go to two different public hearings and the rest of it.
well, and Barney's about to move to the village full-time, so, you know, I've got a guy.
Or a consultant that we can call on for certain applications,
Yeah.
maybe just a.
Well, we could
someone
also do
retained.
that and just expand your budget a little bit.
Or an escrow, if it's something
Yeah.
that's significant. where we
Right,
call-
the town does have a planner working for them. We have a nice volunteer
We do,
that we're fortunate to have.
yeah. Okay, all right, I'll stay in communication with you about this, but thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. I thought this was a better way to do it than trying to write you a letter.
No.
It was a good discussion.
Totally, yeah, and I'm sorry I wasn't at the last meeting, I was out of
Yeah,
town.
it's okay.
All right, thank you all, really appreciate your work.
So is your architect here?
Yep, we're ready to go.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
Yep.
88 Montgomery Street. You have those documents, Jeff?
You want me to present this, right? I assume you guys have printouts of what was
Yeah,
done?
we can,
Oh,
just,
all right, great.
I think the big TV went to sleep.
So it's not gonna work? Come on, you guys.
You gotta wake it up.
We're good.
It went into sleep mode. We have the plans and.
All right, great, excellent. All right,
That goes away in a
all
second.
right. Who's the head person here? Is that you? Okay. My name's Matt Mason, I'm an architect. I live
Okay.
in Saugerties, been around for a little bit. I'm representing John and Mimi Jo Carnella, newcomers to the area.
Welcome.
Yes. John and Mimi were able to purchase the 88 Montgomery, beautiful, beautiful building. Two-story colonial revival. Beautiful place inside and out. As you can see from the site plan, reasonably good-sized lot. Pretty much right where, what John and Mimi are proposing to do a 400 square foot screened-in porch in their rear property. And right where the number 398463 is, it'd pretty much be right below that number. So relatively small area. If you, yes, go to your next sheet unless anyone has a question or,
What about the encroachment of the driveway? What's the story on that?
Sorry?
The encroachment of the driveway onto the adjacent property.
that's what it
Pre-existing.
is.
And yeah, we're not gonna mess with it. I just wondered if.
No,
Jeff, I
that's,
think that
We
that
were
sheet's
told
in
that there's
Is that
a
property owned by the Woods or by the village?
easement, there's an easement.
I think it's the woods.
Woods,
Yeah,
woods
woods.
there, yeah.
right.
So I
and
guess
it
they
is-
don't complain and it's been like that forever.
Right,
Nobody
exactly. You know, that's what it is what it is. Yeah. All right, so you can see, fairly close to the center of the drawing is the screen porch. And that will be one story. Doing it in this very copying the architectural style that's already there. Looks great, and we're just gonna make it look even greater. Just to below the screen porch is a deck, proposed deck, which is not gonna necessarily be built, at least not concurrently. I think they wanted to do the screen porch first and then do the deck area at a later time. Certainly everything was within the setbacks, still plenty of open space, only at 11% of the maximum lot coverage. So this is fairly straightforward,
Not visible from the street.
Yeah.
not visible from the street, but it should be, it's gonna be so beautiful, I don't know.
Yeah. Tell me about materials, because it was a little vague on that. The house is clapboard?
Yes,
The house is clapboard, I couldn't tell.
yes, and we're gonna continue with the same, yes.
So it's wood construction,
Yes,
painted wood construction?
yes, and very little.
It said, you know,
rot resistant.
rot resistant, and I thought that was a euphemism for vinyl.
That was just for the deck pieces, that it would be decay resistant, any replacement of the deck, but any siding and trim would definitely be wood, yes.
So what are the materials you're proposing for the decking in the?
Mahogany, we are proposing mahogany, the existing, go back to,
Yeah, the steps were said, but the
Do you
deck
scroll
itself, the
down?
floor
It
materials
calls out
gonna be mahogany.
decay.
yeah, do you have the photos, the photos of existing conditions?
Yeah, it's farther down.
Scroll down, there we go.
Yeah, go to the next one. Okay, on that lower photo, zoom in a little bit if you can. Yeah, you can see this is the existing porch. Those railings aren't necessarily quite the
greatest railings in the world, and so our demolition is going to be limited to the removal of those railings and doing something much more appropriate to the style, wood railing style to the house. The existing porch there, covered porch, is mahogany, very nice mahogany, tongue and groove that we're going to refinish. Also the treads, and refinish what's there and continue on with the same appearance within the screened-in porch. So,
And the railings will be wood, you're saying?
yes.
Okay, that was my only question, I just wanted to make sure that we were building consistent historic.
Yeah,
materials.
absolutely.
They're Home Depot special right now.
Yeah, we'll get rid of
The
those.
metal.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you can see the architect, you know, it's got nice, simple overhangs, columns, a dental. Go to, if you can, go to my, go to the floor plan, to my drawings. Okay, there's a demolition, so limited to the railings. We're looking at, we might remove the existing mahogany where it's going to be screened-in porch. We just need to look at if we can get a match and replace it with new, so that everything matches up nice. We haven't quite decided on that, but it may be a cost issue, but you know, that would be, this drawing indicates the limits of the demolition. If you could scroll down. Here is the new proposed floor plan of the screened-in porch, 400 square feet.
Okay, I have one question I saw. I
Uh,
believe it was over here, up on this wall here, there was a dryer vent that to me.
Yeah, we're gonna remove those if they're in the way, sure, we'll take the other. Once we get through this, this is my concept phase, and once we get through this, we'll go to final design, and pick up all those details and submit for building permit. So here is a screened-in porch, some skylights, some ceiling fans, some heat, it's gonna be great. Yes, a door on the right side there to gain access to the deck. Yeah, and if there's any questions, scroll to the next drawing. Here is the the southwest view, elevation view. So we're continuing on the same appearance, everything is the same, not changing anything here. So it should blend in nicely, matching all the post caps, high visibility fiberglass screens, so the view from in there will be, you know, try as best we can be. Scroll to the next. Here is the south elevation. You know, pretty straightforward, screened-in porch. This is
That's
all.
west.
I'm sorry, where's my direction? Yes, I'm sorry, west elevation. Yes. This is all Mimi's idea, her initial idea, thumbnail sent to me, and we flesh it out and develop it into something good.
Are this
Those are all existing.
existing
Yep.
little shutters there?
Yep.
I have one of those.
Actually, I
The
think
window where they added onto the house, and there's no
Yeah.
room, so they threw away the shutter.
yeah, the chimney was probably later.
Yeah.
All right, if you could go to the next drawing, and this would be the
That's my question on this.
south
because
elevation. Go ahead.
On the photograph, there is a window up here,
Oh, you know what? You're right, I missed it.
so that's staying.
That is staying. There is one window, lines up with the window on the right, straight above it. Yeah,
So it all looks good to me.
yeah,
And
pretty
it's not
straightforward.
visible from the street, it matches the existing building, as long as we do a condition that the railing is wood construction and painted wood
Yeah,
to match the house or some variation of the house colors, I think we're fine.
okay.
Just on that thread, John, can we go back to A2, Jeff? Sheet A2 on the site plan? It's up from there, yeah, it's like this, yeah, keep going. It's actually the site plan, you'll see the deck from above, there we go. So that's where that note is that John was mentioning with the, maybe you need to scroll down just a slight bit more, with the decay-resistant components. So just to confirm, you had mentioned the mahogany would be the existing porch, it'd continue into the screen porch, then it does look like the decking there is of a different material, at least it's shown as a different material.
We didn't necessarily talk about that. Are you gonna stay with mahogany there, or did you have a thought?
We haven't really thought about it, not yet.
It was in the future, so we didn't quite flesh all of that out.
The mahogany that we have, it is affected by the weather pretty
It's all
significantly.
covered.
And it's covered, and that's not gonna be covered. So,
Because you have a tongue-and-groove porch material now, and then obviously it would transition into a deck material with a little bit of spacing in between it.
Right.
Maybe not mahogany, but maybe something like an ipe or something where you could still stay
It would look.
with a wood construction, is that what
Yeah,
okay?
I mean, obviously, you probably surely don't want to do pressure treated, and is there issue with Trex or anything?
Well, that's what I think we're getting at, is it
Yeah.
Trex, is it wood, is it pressure treated?
Okay, but if it was Trex, that's okay, is that typically acceptable, or just trying to see what the boundaries are?
Well, I don't know the precedent of the board, so I have to defer to the board on this,
I don't
but.
think we have one.
I don't think we have one.
Okay.
My personal opinion is I don't like Trex, but it's inside, so, and it's in the back.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty out of sight.
there's no prohibition, I don't think, against it in the code, so I think we'd probably prefer wood, but you can do what you want as
We long probably as it's prefer not wood
vinyl.
too. It's just, we need a hardy wood.
So how do we feel about it? Do we feel like it's pretty straightforward? Do we want to approve this with whatever conditions people have mentioned?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to do that. Can I have a motion to approve the project with whatever conditions are checked?
What conditions were mentioned?
Wood railing, wood siding,
Okay.
and a decent wood deck material on that.
Yeah, I would say maybe pressure treated would probably be the last on my list,
Yeah.
so I think Trex or
Okay.
an ipe
Okay.
would be more acceptable than pressure treated, if we're allowed to make the condition of no pressure treated lumber.
Right, so do we have a motion for approval of 88 Montgomery Street?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Are you Ryan?
Thank you so much.
Ryan, thank you for your
Well,
help.
thank you, Eric. Thank you for improving things. Thank you, we want people to come and maintain the houses, that's wonderful. It's expensive.
Thank you.
So is there anything else anybody wants to talk about? Ryan, are we going to get some minutes?
I'm confident that we should have something by our January meeting with the earmark that you'll get it leading up to the
Not,
January meeting.
not Tuesday, January,
Second, no, not the day after New
Okay.
New Year's, no.
before that, thank you. Do you want this for signed here?
I can grab it, share after we adjourn, or if you want to hand it to me, it's up to you.
Anything else?
Thanks, Mike.
Did the village board ask us to be lead agency, or they just relented to the idea that they were going to be it, we were going to concede?
Well,
You want to adjourn first?
yeah, let's adjourn.
Okay, I move to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hold on.